My mom's creepy boyfriend sent my dad to prison, but I exposed what he did. Here I am, 41 years old, sitting in my corner office on the 28th floor, having just finalized our Series C funding at a valuation that would make most entrepreneurs weep. I built this company from absolutely nothing. Started in a cramped studio apartment to now leading 320 employees across 5 cities. We develop enterprise analytics software for logistics optimization. Sounds boring as hell to most people, but the profit margins? Absolutely incredible. Every single morning when I walk into this building, I pass that framed Fortune magazine cover hanging in the lobby, the one where I'm standing with my arms crossed, wearing that confident smile I must have practiced 100 times in the bathroom mirror. But today feels different somehow. Today feels like the start of something significant. I've been noticing patterns for the past several months, small things that accumulate into something impossible to ignore. The way certain people commandeer every meeting, how they constantly interrupt others mid-sentence, the way they over-explain concepts that everyone in the room already understands perfectly well, how they claim credit for ideas so smoothly, so naturally, like it's just part of breathing. So I started keeping detailed records on my personal laptop. Just careful observations, really. 52 documented instances in the past month alone of male employees speaking over their female colleagues during meetings. 68% of all promotions over the last 18 months went to men, despite women comprising 53% of our total workforce. I did all the calculations myself, spent 4 consecutive weekends digging through HR databases with a bottle of red wine and this growing sense of absolute clarity. Numbers don't lie, even when the people around them do. I've scheduled a board meeting for this afternoon. Spent my entire morning rehearsing exactly how I'll present this. They'll understand once I lay out all the evidence, once they see what I've been seeing. This isn't about some petty revenge or misplaced anger or whatever reductive interpretation people will inevitably try to force onto it. This is about pure optimization, about engineering the absolute best possible work environment, about systematically removing obstacles to genuine excellence. My company, my vision, my decisions. The board meeting actually goes better than I anticipated, though Patterson from our investor group keeps making this face. You know the face. That concerned expression that really means maybe you should pump the brakes here. But I control the majority voting shares and absolutely everyone knows it. I walk them through the new restructuring policy very carefully, referencing all the compiled data. We'll be reorganizing based on rigorous performance metrics, cultural alignment, and adherence to core company values. The fact that this reorganization will predominantly impact male employees is simply correlation, not causation. We're not terminating men for being men. We are terminating underperformers who happen to be men. That distinction matters both legally and ethically. Martinez from our legal department looks like she desperately wants to interject, but she doesn't. Good. I hired her for her legal expertise, not her personal opinions on company strategy. The policy officially launches next Monday. I'm giving Human Resources the weekend to prepare all the necessary documentation. I spend the following days feeling genuinely electric, more alive than I've felt since those early startup years. This is what real leadership looks like, making difficult decisions that others are too afraid to make. Thursday afternoon, Daniel from our engineering division requests a one-on-one meeting. He's always been one of the reasonable ones, consistently respectful, actually listens when people talk. I figured he'd understand the logic better than most. Instead, he asks whether I've genuinely thought through all the implications, tells me that 63% of our senior engineering leadership is male, and if the policy impacts them significantly, will hemorrhage institutional knowledge that took years to build. Such a predictable response, acting like certain people are somehow irreplaceable. I tell him directly that everyone is replaceable. That's fundamental management theory from day one. He exits looking completely deflated, and I feel this tiny, uncomfortable twist in my stomach. I push it down immediately. Feelings aren't data. Friday morning, I receive an email from our head of human resources requesting we discuss the implementation timeline. She wants to slow everything down considerably, execute it in gradual phases. Absolutely not. You rip the bandage off quickly. Make it a clean, decisive break. The longer we delay, the more time people have to organize legal representation or create problems. She sends back a 3-paragraph response with the subject line, "Serious legal concerns." I delete it without reading past the first line. I have actual attorneys on retainer for exactly this. The weekend passes in this blur of final preparations. I'm reviewing the compiled list of names, 153 employees total. It's higher than my initial projections, but the performance metrics don't lie. Some of these people have been with me since the absolute beginning. Robert, who goaled our first website redesign working out of his apartment. Michael, who pulled 80-hour weeks during our Series A funding crunch. But sentimentality isn't strategy. Nostalgia isn't a viable business plan. Monday morning arrives with this unusual rain. I spend 2 full hours on my appearance. Hair, hair, makeup, outfit selection. Appearances matter significantly on days like this. I need to project absolute confidence, unwavering certainty, crystalline vision. The terminations are scheduled to occur simultaneously at exactly 10 a.m. across all our offices. Human Resources has received their briefing, Security has received their instructions, IT has been told to revoke all system access at the precise moment of notification. I'll address the remaining staff at 11 via company-wide video conference. 9:55. I'm standing in my office watching the clock, observing people moving around normally in the main workspace below. They have absolutely no idea what's coming. There's a particular kind of power in that, knowing something they don't. 10 o'clock happens silently from my vantage point. I just watch as people start getting called into various conference rooms throughout the building. I take a sip of my coffee. It's gone completely cold, but I drink it anyway. My phone starts vibrating constantly. Text messages from our office managers. Portland office complete. Denver office complete. New York office currently in progress. Seattle office reporting 2 employees not present. Will handle remotely. 10:23. My desk phone rings. It's building security from the main lobby. Apparently there's what they're calling a situation. Someone named Kevin from our sales department is apparently refusing to exit the building, demanding to speak with me personally and directly. I tell security to escort him out immediately. That's literally what we pay them for. I hang up before they can respond with questions. More calls keep coming, more text messages. Everything starts blurring together into this overwhelming stream. 10:45. Someone knocks firmly on my office door. It's Rachel from our product division. Her face is completely blotchy and red from crying. She says we just terminated her entire team, all 9 of them. Says there's absolutely no way she can deliver on our product roadmap without them. I tell her this represents an opportunity to rebuild better, to bring in people who actually align with our culture authentically. She stares at me like I'm speaking some incomprehensible foreign language. She starts to say something, stops herself, then just leaves. 11 o'clock, time for the all-hands meeting. I connect to the video conference system, 241 participants. I can see these tiny thumbnail squares of faces, mostly women now, which was precisely the point of this entire exercise. I begin delivering my prepared remarks about bold leadership and necessary organizational change, about building a kind of company where absolutely everyone can genuinely thrive, about removing toxic cultural elements and creating space for authentic voices to emerge. Someone unmutes themselves and asks whether we're planning to hire replacement staff. Of course we are. Better replacements, more culturally aligned replacements who share our actual values. Someone else asks how we're possibly supposed to meet our third quarter commitments with half the engineering team suddenly gone. I explain that this is about long-term strategic thinking, not short-term reactionary panic. More questions keep coming, increasingly hostile in tone and energy. I end the meeting earlier than scheduled. Tell everyone to return to their actual work. I spend the afternoon fielding continuous calls from our investors. They've all seen the news coverage. Information travels incredibly fast in our industry. I assure each of them this is purely a strategic reorganization. Nothing more dramatic than that. I remind them of our growth trajectory, our dominant market position, our strong fundamentals. Most of them seem satisfied, or at least they stop asking questions. Patterson calls last. He speaks in that extremely careful way people use when they think you might be psychologically unstable. Asks whether I've properly considered the optics, the very real potential for extensive litigation. I tell him I have an entire legal team employed for exactly this scenario. He says something about fiduciary responsibility and I genuinely stop listening. I end the call while he's mid-sentence. Tuesday morning, I wake up to 19 missed calls on my phone. The first one I return is Martinez from legal. She sounds absolutely exhausted. Says she's been awake all night. 4 separate law firms have already filed formal notices of intent to sue. Potential class action lawsuit, claims of discrimination, wrongful termination, hostile work environment, the complete playbook. I ask her whether we anticipated this possibility, and she says yes. We discussed this extensively in multiple meetings. I don't particularly remember those specific discussions, but whatever. I ask what our defense strategy looks like. There's this long pause before she responds that our defense is significantly complicated by some of the documentation I personally provided to the board. The documentation that explicitly tracked and categorized employees by gender. I feel my stomach drop suddenly, but I keep my voice completely steady. Tell her to handle it. That's literally her job description. She asks whether I want to consider settlement negotiations. Absolutely not. Settling is admitting wrongdoing. I hang up and immediately receive another call from our public relations firm. Apparently, Bloomberg is running a major story this afternoon. They've obtained quotes from multiple
multiple former employees. The headline uses the word purge. I tell PR to get ahead of it immediately, issue a statement about performance-based restructuring and organizational optimization. They ask whether I want to personally review this statement before publication. No time for that. Just send it.
I check Twitter, even though I absolutely know I shouldn't. We're trending, not in any good way. There's plenty of schadenfreude from people who genuinely love watching successful women fail spectacularly. But there's also serious criticism from people I actually thought would understand my position. Women and technology I've shared conference panels with. People I genuinely considered allies in this fight. They're using words like extremist and counterproductive and damaging. One particular tweet has 23,000 likes. It says I'm doing more harm to feminism than the patriarchy ever managed to accomplish. I close the application and throw my phone across the office. It hits the wall but doesn't break. Annoying. Wednesday brings news that our largest client is formally requesting an urgent meeting to discuss what they're calling relationship continuity. They've been with us since year 2. They represent 43% of our total annual revenue. Their VP of operations was apparently college roommates with one of the people we just terminated. The meeting is scheduled for Friday, giving me exactly 2 days to prepare some kind of response. I spend Wednesday afternoon in consecutive back-to-back calls with all our department heads. Engineering says they need to hire at least 25 people immediately just to cover critical infrastructure functions. I ask how quickly we can realistically recruit and onboard that many qualified people. Our new head of engineering, who just got promoted literally on Monday, says realistically we're looking at 5 to 7 months. 5 to 7 months? Are you joking? She's not joking at all. Her face is completely serious. She starts explaining something about highly specialized knowledge and security clearances and complex infrastructure dependencies. I tell her to figure out how to make it happen faster. That's what she's being paid for now. She nods slowly, but I can absolutely see in her expression that she doesn't believe it's remotely possible. Sales reports that 4 major deals currently in our pipeline have completely gone dark. Prospects aren't returning calls or emails. Scheduled meetings are being canceled without explanation. I ask what the common thread is, and they tell me the common thread is that Bloomberg article. Prospect companies don't want any association with controversy. I tell sales to identify new prospects immediately. The market is full of companies who need our services. Thursday morning, I arrive at our building to discover protesters gathered outside the main entrance. It's a relatively small group, maybe 25 people, but they have professionally printed signs and someone with a megaphone. Security informs me they showed up at 7 a.m. The signs say things like, "Sexism works both ways," and "Discrimination is still discrimination." One sign just displays my face with a bright red X drawn through it. I use the parking garage entrance instead. Take the freight elevator up. When I reach my office, there's a resignation letter sitting on my desk. It's from Rachel in product, the one who came to see me Monday. She writes that she can't in good conscience continue working here, says the new policy has created a genuinely toxic environment and completely destroyed team cohesion, says she's deeply disappointed in me on a personal level. That last line stings more than it probably should. I crumple the letter and throw it toward the trash can. Then, immediately, I retrieve it from the garbage, smooth it out carefully, put it in my dress drawer. I don't actually know why. 9 a.m. brings an emergency board meeting that I definitely didn't call myself. Patterson is physically here in person, flew in from Portland specifically for this. That's never a positive sign. He does most of the talking while the other board members just nod along in agreement. He says the investors are deeply concerned about company stability, says the multiple lawsuits represent a serious financial risk to everyone, says my leadership during this crisis has been what he calls questionable. That specific word, questionable, like I'm some kind of failed experiment. I defend every single decision I've made, walk them through the complete reasoning again from the beginning. They're not actually listening. I can see it clearly in their eyes. They've already decided something before this meeting even started. This is just performance theater. Patterson suggests I consider taking a temporary leave of absence while things stabilize. I suggest instead that everyone remember exactly who built this company from absolutely nothing. I remind them that I control the majority interest, that I can't simply be forced out on a whim. Martinez from legal clears her throat carefully. She says, actually, the shareholder agreement does have certain provisions. Provisions for what? I ask, already knowing the answer. Provisions for removal of officers during times of severe crisis. Requires 70% board approval. I look around the conference table, counting votes rapidly in my head. Patterson, definitely yes. The 2 investors
investors from Series C? Probably yes. Our CFO, who I personally hired 4 years ago, uncertain. Martinez, completely unknown. The 2 independent board members could go either direction. I call for an immediate vote right there. Force their hand. I want to see who's actually loyal. The motion fails, but barely. 5 in favor, 4 against. Patterson looks frustrated but accepts the outcome. The meeting ends with vague promises to reconvene again next week. Friday arrives and I've barely slept at all. The meeting with our largest client is scheduled for 2 p.m. I spend my entire morning preparing this detailed presentation about continuity of service, highlighting our operational redundancies, our documented processes, our unwavering commitment to excellence. Noon, I receive a text message from their VP's executive assistant. Meeting canceled. No explanation provided whatsoever. I call their main office number, get transferred 4 different times, finally reach someone with actual information. They're exercising the 60-day termination clause in our contract. They say it's purely a business decision, nothing personal, everything is personal. That's the comfortable lie people tell themselves to avoid difficult truths. I sit in my office with the door closed, staring at absolutely nothing. This was supposed to work. The mathematics was supposed to work. Remove the obstacles, create space for superior performance, achieve better results. Simple, logical, obvious, except reality is considerably messier than spreadsheets and data models. Revenue projections for next quarter are down 47%. 15 more employees have resigned. Interestingly, all of them women. The lawsuits now number 9 separate cases. Legal fees are rapidly approaching $2.3 million. Our recruiting department has received 470 applications for our 25 open engineering positions. Sounds promising until you realize we normally receive over 3,000 applications, and most of these 470 are completely unqualified. People just hate applying to make some kind of point. I stand up and walk over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, look down at the city sprawling below. I used to genuinely love this view, this sensation of being above everything. Now it just feels profoundly lonely. I wonder if this is how Icarus felt in that critical moment of realization before the fall. I shake my head firmly. No, that's not the correct metaphor at all. Icarus was hubristic and foolish. I was strategic and principled. If people can't see that fundamental difference, that's their limitation, not mine. Saturday and Sunday blend together in my apartment. I keep thinking about going into the office, but I can't seem to find any motivation. I scroll through news coverage obsessively. We're not trending anymore, already replaced by some celebrity scandal. Being forgotten is somehow worse than being criticized.
Monday morning, I force myself to shower and dress properly. Arrive at the office at 6 a.m. to avoid the protesters. They're still there. Smaller group now, but clearly more committed. Same dedicated faces from last week. I get to my desk and start working through emails. 463 unread messages. I start with the ones from board members. Figure those are most urgent and important. Patterson has sent a formal proposal for restructuring company leadership. Wants to bring in an outside chief operating officer to handle day-to-day operations. Says I can remain a CEO, but in a more visionary, less operational capacity. Corporate code language for sidelining me in my own company. I delete the email immediately. The next email is from our head of human resources. She's resigning, effective immediately. Says the stress is severely affecting her physical health. Says she can't continue implementing policies she finds morally unconscionable. Morally unconscionable, like she's some kind of ultimate ethics authority. She works in HR. Her literal job is executing company policy. More resignation emails fill my inbox. Feels like everyone's abandoning ship simultaneously. Around noon, my executive assistant knocks and enters without waiting for any response. She never does this. We have established rules about this. Her face is completely white. She's holding up her phone. She shows me a tweet from our company's official verified account, except I definitely didn't approve any tweets today. It's a full corporate apology for the restructuring. Says it was a mistaken judgment. Says we're deeply committed to diversity and inclusion for everyone. Says we're actively working to make things right. Who authorized this? Who has access to our social media accounts? She says the marketing team made a collective decision without authorization. The marketing team making major decisions about company policy without authorization? I tell her to delete it immediately. She says it already has 53,000 retweets. Deleting it now will look even worse. I tell her I don't care how it looks. Delete it right now. She nods quickly and leaves. I check Twitter and the tweet is already gone, but screenshots are absolutely everywhere. Now there are 2 competing narratives, the original mass firings and the unauthorized apology. We look completely incompetent
incompetent, chaotic, out of control. Because we are incompetent, chaotic, out of control. No, that's not right. They are. Everyone around me is failing. I stand up and pace my office. Try to think strategically. Try to identify the path forward. Could hire back some of the terminated employees. Spin it as listening to feedback and stakeholder concerns. No, that's pure capitulation. That's admitting defeat. Could double down instead. Explain the vision more clearly and comprehensively. Make people finally understand. No, explanation clearly isn't the problem anymore. People are actively choosing not to understand. Could resign entirely. Walk away. Start over somewhere else with a clean slate. The thought appears unbidden, and I physically recoil from it. This company is mine. Built from absolutely nothing. Carries my vision. I'm not going anywhere. Tuesday brings an unexpected visitor. Rebecca Thompson used to work for me 5 years ago as VP of Sales. Left to start her own company. We've stayed friendly, if not exactly friends. She asks if we can talk off the record. Sure, why not? Nothing is on the record anymore anyway. She sits across from my desk, looks around the office like she's carefully assessing something, tells me she's heard things through the industry grapevine, wanted to check in personally. I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. The company is fine. Everything is completely fine. She does this small, sad smile, knowing and empathetic, says I sound exactly like she did right before her first startup failed catastrophically. Her company didn't fail, though. It got acquired. That's completely different. No, she says, her first company, before that one, the one nobody talks about anymore, ran it directly into the ground, trying to prove a point, lost absolutely everything. I don't see how this is relevant to my current situation. She leans forward, speaks very carefully, says being right and being effective are two fundamentally different things. Says she's watched me over the years, watched me become increasingly angry. Angry about what? I asked defensively. About everything, she says. About the unfairness, the systematic obstacles, the way the entire game is rigged against us. And she's not wrong. It is rigged. Anger is a completely reasonable response to injustice. She says anger is fine, absolutely valid, but letting it drive every single decision is dangerous. Says I've become so intensely focused on fighting the system that I'd completely stopped building what I actually wanted to build. I feel something crack inside my chest. Pressure I didn't even know I was holding. She's wrong. This is exactly what I wanted to build. Except as I think it, I suddenly remember the early days. The genuine excitement of solving problems, creating something useful. When did that become secondary to making a point? When did proving something become more important than building something?
Rebecca is still talking, but I'm not hearing the actual words anymore, just watching her mouth move. There's kindness in her eyes that feels uncomfortably like pity. She eventually stands up, says she hopes I figure things out, leaves her business card on my desk, says to call if I need anything at all. After she leaves, I sit very still for an extremely long time. Wednesday morning, I wake up and can't remember falling asleep. I'm still wearing yesterday's clothes, still at my desk. Sun is coming through the windows. I must have worked through the entire night, though I genuinely don't remember what I worked on. I check my computer. Dozens of documents open. Financial projections, all catastrophically bad. Organization charts with too many empty boxes. Draft emails to the board that I apparently never sent. Probably for the best. The language is completely unhinged. Paranoid, accusatory. I don't remember writing them, but they're in my distinctive style. My phone is dead. I plug it in and wait for it to power up. 71 missed calls. Feels like a genuinely bad sign. First voicemail is from Patterson. Timestamp 3:47 a.m. Says we need to talk immediately. His tone is extremely serious. Second voicemail is from Martinez and Legal. Says there's been a significant development in the litigation. Third voicemail is from our CFO. Says we need to discuss cash flow with extreme urgency. I don't listen to the rest. Already know they're all bad news. I call Patterson first. He answers on the first ring like he was waiting. Asks where I've been. Says he's been trying to reach me for hours. I was working. Is that a crime now? He ignores the sarcasm completely. Says the board is meeting tonight. Emergency session. I remind him the board meetings require 48 hours advance notice per the corporate bylaws. He says this is an emergency session. The bylaws have provisions for emergencies. Of course they do. Bylaws always have convenient provisions when people want to remove you. The meeting is at 6 p.m. My attendance is requested but not required. That's specific phrasing. Requested but not required means they're voting on something about me without needing me present. I ask him directly if this is a removal vote. Long pause. Then he says, it's a discussion of leadership structure going forward. Same thing, just cowardly corporate language. I tell him I'll be there. Hang up and look around my office. Everything exactly as I arranged it, except somehow fundamentally different. That Fortune magazine cover looks completely completely hollow now, my smile frozen in a moment that feels like ancient history. Awards and plaques from various industry organizations covering the walls, all celebrating the wrong things. Celebrating my gender, my so-called breakthrough, my representation, never celebrating the actual work, the actual product, the actual value created. Maybe that should have been a warning sign all along. I spend the day preparing for the board meeting, not preparing arguments or presentations, just preparing myself mentally, trying to decide who I am if I'm not the CEO of this company, trying to remember who I was before I became so consumed with proving everyone wrong. I can't really remember anymore. It's been too long. 6 p.m. arrives, and I walk into the conference room. Everyone's already seated, waiting. I take my usual seat at the head of the table. Patterson starts talking about fiduciary duty and shareholder value, about the critical need for experienced crisis management, about bringing in interim leadership while we stabilize operations. All the polite corporate speak that actually means you're fired, but we're too professional to say it directly. I let him finish completely, don't interrupt even though I desperately want to. When he's done, he asks if I have anything to say. I look around the table at these people. Some I've done for years, some are relatively new, all of them carefully avoiding direct eye contact. I could fight this, could force them to vote, could draw it out extensively. I have controlling interest, technically, could make this extremely difficult for everyone. But what's the point? What am I even fighting for anymore? I ask one question. Who are you bringing in to replace me? Patterson looks visibly relieved that I'm not fighting, says they have someone in mind, experienced operator, proven track record in corporate turnarounds. I ask if it's a man. Confusion around the table at the question. Yes, he says. Does that matter? I laugh then. Can't help it. Bitter sound. Of course it's a man. Of course the solution to my radical female leadership is conventional male leadership. The irony is so perfect it almost physically hurts. I tell them all resign effective immediately. Don't want to drag this out. Don't want to be some interim CEO reporting to a crisis manager. Patterson starts talking about transition periods and orderly handoffs. I tell him to handle it however he wants. I'm done. I stand up and walk out of the conference room. Don't look back. Don't wait for any responses. I go to my office and start packing. There's not much personal stuff really. I practically lived here, but didn't actually live here. A few photos, some books, the awards I guess, though I don't particularly want them anymore. I look at the Fortune cover one final time. That woman staring back at me seems like a complete stranger. So confident, so certain, so sure she had all the answers. I take it off the wall and put it face down in a box. Security arrives around 8 p.m. to escort me out of the building. They're apologetic about it, say it's just standard policy. I tell them I understand completely, no hard feelings. They looked relieved, probably expected me to cause a scene. I would have a week ago, but I'm too exhausted now. I ride the elevator down 28 floors in complete silence, walk through the lobby where I used to feel such pride, out into the evening air where the protesters are long gone. Nobody cares anymore. Already moved on to the next outrage. I sit in my car in the parking garage for a while, not sure where to go, what to do, who to be. Eventually drive home on autopilot. My apartment feels cold and empty. Haven't spent much time here in months. I pour a glass of wine and sit by the window. Think about Rebecca's question, about when building something became about proving something. Think about all the women I told myself I was helping. Half of them resigned anyway, couldn't stand working in the environment I created. Think about the men I fired, their faces, their careers. I told myself they deserved it. They were the problem. Removing them was the solution. But what did I actually solve? Didn't make the company better, made it worse. Didn't advance feminism, made it look ridiculous. Didn't prove women could lead, just proved that bad leadership is gender neutral. The thing about being really intelligent is you can convince yourself of absolutely anything. You can build elaborate justifications for whatever you want to do, can cite statistics and data and metrics, can make the unreasonable sound perfectly reasonable. I spent months doing exactly that, building a case for something I wanted to do anyway. I wanted to fire all those men, not because of performance metrics. I wanted to fire them because I was angry. Angry at every man who ever interrupted me, dismissed me, underestimated me. Angry at the industry, at society, at the fundamental unfairness of everything. And that anger is valid. The unfairness is real. But channeling that anger into mass firings didn't fix anything. Just created more unfairness, more anger, more damage. I sit with that realization for a long time. Pour another glass of wine. Think about what I could have done differently. Could have mentored more, fired less. Could have built slowly, changed culture gradually. Could have focused on creating something genuinely good instead of destroying what I saw as bad. But I was so sure, so certain I was right. Certainty is a kind of blindness. My phone buzzes. Text from Rebecca. Just says, "You you okay? I stare at the message for a while before responding. Type out no, then delete it. Type out I messed up everything, then delete that too. Finally just send not really. She responds immediately. Want company? Do I want company? Do I want to admit weakness? Do I want to be vulnerable? Yes, apparently I do. I text back my address. She shows up 45 minutes later with Thai food and more wine. We eat in silence for a while. Finally, she asks what I'm going to do next. I don't know. Maybe nothing for a while. She nods, says that's probably smart. Asks if I've thought about what went wrong. I laugh. That's all I've been thinking about. She waits. Doesn't push, just eats her pad thai. I start talking eventually. Can't seem to stop once I start. Tell her about the anger, the certainty, the need to prove something. Tell her about watching the company spiral and being unable to course correct. Tell her about the moment I realized I'd become the kind of leader I used to despise. Authoritarian, dismissive, convinced of my own righteousness. She listens to all of it. Doesn't interrupt, doesn't judge. When I'm done, she asks one question. Do I still believe in the underlying problem? The unfairness that made me angry? Yes, of course. That's all still real. So what's the lesson? She asks. I think about it for a while. The lesson is that being right about the problem doesn't mean you're right about the solution. The lesson is that extreme actions have extreme consequences. The lesson is that you can't fix systemic issues by creating different systemic issues. The lesson is that leadership requires more than conviction, requires wisdom. And I had conviction, but not wisdom. Had anger, but not understanding. Had power, but not perspective. She nods slowly, says that's a good start. Start of what, I ask. Start of figuring out who you want to be now, she says. We talk until late. Eventually, she leaves. I sit alone in my apartment thinking about that question. Who do I want to be now? Not the crusader, not the warrior, not the revolutionary. Those versions of me caused too much damage. Maybe just someone who does good work, someone who treats people fairly, someone who builds things that matter without needing them to prove something. Sounds simple, but feels impossible. Months pass. Strange liminal time. The company brings in the new CEO. He's fine, competent, boring, implements normal policies, hires back some of the fired employees, settles the lawsuits. Within 6 months, the company is stable again. Within a year, it's growing again. Everything I built saved by undoing what I did. Another lesson in there somewhere.
I get offers from other companies, board positions mostly. People love a redemption arc, want to be part of my comeback story. I turn them all down. Not ready, maybe never will be. I start consulting instead, small projects, working from home, helping companies with actual problems, logistics optimization, efficiency analysis, the boring stuff I used to be good at before I got distracted by being a symbol. I meet with Rebecca regularly. She becomes something like a friend. First real friend I've had in years, maybe ever. She's building her 4th company now, doing it right this time. Balanced team, reasonable policies, sustainable growth, everything I should have done. One day, she asks if I want to come work with her, not as CEO, not even as an executive, just as a senior advisor. Help build something good without the pressure of leading it. I say yes, before I can overthink it. First day at her office feels weird, being an employee again, but also feels right, appropriate, earned. No corner office, no magazine covers, no grand vision, just work, actual work, solving actual problems. Turns out I'm still good at this part, the part where you analyze systems and find efficiencies, the part where you build tools that help people do their jobs better, the part I loved before everything got complicated. Months turn into a year turns into 2. Life becomes quiet, normal, almost boring. I sometimes see news about my old company. They're doing well, got acquired eventually, everyone made money, happy ending for them. My name barely comes up in the coverage, already forgotten. I used to think being forgotten would destroy me. Turns out it's actually kind of peaceful, no longer representing anything, just existing, no longer proving anything, just working. I'm sitting in a coffee shop one morning, reading a news article about some new CEO, young woman making waves in tech, talking about disruption and revolution and changing everything. I recognize the language, the certainty, the anger. I feel worried for her. Hope she figures it out before I did. Hope someone tells her that anger is fuel, but not direction. That conviction is power, but not wisdom. That being right about the problem doesn't justify any solution. I close the laptop and stare out the window. Think about everything I lost, everything I destroyed, the company, the reputation, the relationships, the years of work, the trust, the possibility. All of it gone because I couldn't tell the difference between justice and revenge, couldn't separate fixing things from breaking things, couldn't see that the opposite of one bad thing isn't automatically a good
good thing. Sometimes it's just a different bad thing. I still believe the system is unfair, still see the obstacles, still get angry about interruptions and dismissals and underestimation. But now I do something different with that anger. Channel it into work, into building, into creating small improvements. Not revolutionary, not dramatic, not worthy of magazine covers, but real, sustainable, actually helpful. Maybe that's enough.